So Day for Night is it's a second year festival. The first year was last year in December in Houston, and we last year we're in a location that was sort of 10 minutes from downtown Houston, and this year we've moved to a new location that is right next to the to downtown Houston, an abandoned post office, and we have 1.5 million square feet. That is going to be a combination of multiple stages, outdoor and indoor, a big sort of music lineup, and then a visual arts lineup. So I'm going to show you guys, this is our lineup release video. So that's our lineup for this year. And obviously what I'm here to talk about is more of the visual arts portion than the music portion. The music is obviously a very big part of this festival, but what we define ourselves by, or sort of our DNA, is that we combine music and arts and visual arts in the most, let's say, meshed way possible. We try to not do what we see in a lot of festivals, which is a sort of a music festival that peppers a venue with some random installations here and there. We really try to sort of merge the two together. So there's a logic in the picking of the music acts, which is that we try to pick people that have a strong visual component, and then on the art side we also as much as possible collaborate with people who have a sonic component to their work as well. And the experience is designed in a way that in a few words, the history of the festival is that it came from an idea from somebody who had a music festival in Houston. It was a typical summer festival. It was called a Free Press Summer Fest. Started out as a block party. After 7 years, had 80,000 to 100,000 people. Became this really big thing. And the person who started it was getting a little tired of like sort of the same thing over and over. People go to stages and they don't want to see an act. They get drunk somewhere, and there's not really sort of anything much beyond that. And so the idea was, how do we create a festival that shakes up that formula a little bit, and that gives people an opportunity to do something aside from just being in a show, watching a concert. What do we do that sort of expands the experience for them? And last year, when we launched the festival, we actually had a really hard time explaining this concept, because when we said, oh, we're doing a music and visual arts festival, a lot of people came to us and said, oh, cool, so you're going to do graffiti, or you're going to do like paintings and sculptures and stuff like that. And we're like, no, that's not the idea. And it was a concept that people didn't really get. And then what we saw when our audience arrived was this amazing level of engagement. So typically the way that we interact with arts is, you go to a gallery or you go to an event, and you're kind of on a schedule. You got somewhere else to go, you got something else to do, and so you sort of zip through stuff. Whereas here, what we saw is that people had a lot of time. Like if they were not interested in what was on stage between a certain hour and a certain hour, they would go and they would sit in front of an installation, and people would literally stay for a really long time and just sort of experience it fully. And that was a beautiful, very satisfying feeling to see that level of engagement. So that's something that we're sort of continuing to explore, is like, the way that we sort of think about this is, we have a big site. We're in Texas, so everything is very big, and we we want to give artists the possibility of working on a large scale and to do site-specific work. So the process really is to engage with them early on, talk about the venue, talk about what could be done in that venue. Um, there are very few cases where we have artists that bring existing work. Typically, what we do is we talk to them about, what is like something that you could do for our venue and for our crowd and for the fact that we're in this music festival, et cetera, et cetera. So site specific. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more, but I do want to show you guys this video, which is a little bit of a making of, so you can kind of see the scale and the type of work and the arts more specifically. So that shows you a little bit of how we built this. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about sort of the process of, the reasoning behind some of these selections. And so I listed here, on the first paragraph, you have the artists from last year, and on the second one, you have the ones from this year. And there are some people, actually a few people that are in this room that are in this lineup. And as you can see, there are some names in here that you guys probably know, that are people that are, have been doing really interesting, impressive, inspiring work in the field of you know, what we would call computational, new media, interactive, light arts, a field that sort of doesn't really have a particular name, and it's something that, you know, is probably on a lot of people's mind, is like, what is this called, you know? And it's something that that I think about a lot, and then I try to explain it to people when they ask me, like, what is it that you're showing? And you know, it's really hard to put a category on this. So obviously, a lot of everything is digital, but that really doesn't mean anything. A lot of it involves lights. It involves light almost as a sculptural element. It involves sound. It involves interactivity in a lot of cases. It involves some level of computational art, so using you know, codes to be generative or to drive certain aspects of the installation. And most of all, it's really immersive. And I think that's sort of the big thing for us, is that, you know, this is art that you experience in a space, and you experience it over time, and you experience it because you're submerged in it, or because it's just very big and it's sort of something that sucks you in. And our, you know, choice, the way that we choose the people that we work with is based on their ability to create that kind of work at a large scale, and to, in essence, like, create a feeling of awe and of, you know, of wonder. So a lot of the names here are, you know, people like Casey Reese, who's founder of Processing, Zach Lieberman, one of the founders of Open Frameworks, UVA, who have been United Visual Artists, who have been doing pretty insane work with light and installations for many years. Golan Levin, who's also a big member of the Open Frameworks community, a teacher at Carnegie Mellon in Pittsburgh. So people who are sort of leaders in this undefined new media art space. And one of the things that's really interesting for us is this dialogue between sort of creating an art environment that is not necessarily something that art people would write about. You wouldn't read about it in Art Forum or in Frieze magazine, but it is its own sort of world of art practice. And the way that we, I think, have this really interesting formula is that people will typically come to this festival because they want to see Aphex Twin, or they want to see Cascade, or they want to see Butthole Surfers, or Jesus and Mary Chain. So they buy tickets for that. They don't buy $150 tickets to come and see UVA. But then what happens is that they arrive at this venue and they're like, holy shit, what is this? I've never heard of it, or I've never seen something like this. And so what essentially happens is that there's this sort of permeation of this type of work that then expands and gets people excited about it. And we've had this amazing response from people in Houston who have, you know, VJs who all of a sudden are like, oh, I'm going to pick up processing, or I'm going to learn Open Frameworks, or what is that touch designer thing, or what, you know, this whole sort of new approach to producing art that, you know, everybody in this room is familiar with in one way or another, but that is not something that sort of permeated the wider cultural spectrum. So that's something that we consider to be a little bit of our mission, is to sort of expose people to that, expose it to the best work that's out there, the most interesting artists, and to sort of you know, create a dialogue with people about this kind of work, and what it means, and why we're interested in it. So I'm going to show you just one more video, and then I'll stop showing videos. But this is something that we put together as an explanation of what our approach is towards the sort of the curatorial aspect, the relationship with the audience, and also the connection between art and music. We are able to do something that is normally never done, which is to mix crowds in an organic way. You know, galleries have a certain type of crowd, and music festivals have a certain type of crowd.
Museum culture, gallery culture is, in a way, fairly isolated within our larger society. And so it's exciting for me to reach new audiences and have different people see the work.
And what's interesting is that since this type of art that's based on light
computation and interactivity is sort of an emerging field, we're giving these people an opportunity to get familiar with it and to then become curious about what else there is out there.
Technology, music, and visual things are merging quickly. I think that people enjoy the combination and they enjoy going between these mediums. And I think in the future there will be a difference between them. And I think one of the things that makes this festival great also is that it puts them together. A lot of digital art festival mix music and installations, art installations, but this festival in particular has like big headliners that bring different kind of people, and we felt like a lot of people were not really aware of what light art is or digital art is, and looking at their reaction was really motivating because I think it felt pure. Today, it would be boring to dissociate music and art or music and visual, and I think it should be a new standard of festival. A lot of the musicians who are here performing at Day for Night are some of my favorites. So being able to show alongside them is extraordinary for one.
And to be in a place which is really elevating, putting things side by side, that for me that's really beautiful. And that's a kind of special thing. And you don't see that, I haven't seen that in America at all. This kind of music festival with art, that's what is exciting about being in a space like this.
Sorry about the out of sync. So that's a little bit of our explanation of our philosophy and how we operate. I'm going to quickly show you guys a LiDAR scan that we've been doing of our new venue. Try to skip forward a little bit to get there, if it'll load. But we've basically taken over this this large post office building. So this is the sort of the front of it. And it's got a very, very big sort of warehouse space behind it that you can see when we start panning out here. And so we're going to have 2 stages that are going to be 2.5 stages outdoors, two big ones, and then a sort of a DJ setup. And then there will be a stage indoors as well. There will be outdoor installations and indoor installations. So, for example, Bjork is taking over a very, very large footprint. She's creating 8 rooms of her currently evolving exhibition called Bjork Digital, which is essentially her approach towards transforming her music into immersive art, may it be virtual reality, her biophilia app, her music videos, etc., etc. So this is going to be the first time that this exhibition will be seen in the States. It was first shown in Sydney, then it went to Tokyo, now it's in London, and then it's coming to Houston. So I'm going to skip through because I think I'm burning through my time here, but I wanted to talk quickly about Touch Designer. And one of the things that was great for us is that last year we had quite a few artists using Touch Designer at the event. So the first one is Vincent, who's sitting here in the front row with AV&C. And they created this really beautiful installation that was one of the most successful of the events, which was a triangular scrim with fog in the middle. And then Vincent created these real-time fluid animations that were projected on the scrim, and they would sort of distort in the fog. And I highly recommend that you check out, the videos that are online. It's called Lull, a really beautiful piece. So Vincent will probably talk more about his work with real-time stuff. And then we had Marcus Heckman, who's on the derivative team, who has this box, light box. So Marcus's approach was really to say, not so interested in projecting imagery. I've seen enough images. I want to deal with pure light. And what can I do with light as almost like a tangible element? So he created this sort of box with fog, and then using Touch Designer, he was essentially creating these patterns that were then distributed in the fog. And you can see that they would create this at the end of the box, these sort of simple patterns, but they were very beautiful and geometric. And then we had Gabriel Pulezio, who created this light collider piece, which was essentially something that he completely fabricated from scratch. a bunch of spinning pieces of acrylic and with LEDs inside, and essentially the LEDs would sort of reflect on the wall and create these really interesting patterns while it was spinning. And then there was a sound component as well. When you walked past it, it would sort of swoosh and sort of give you this kind of reaction. So aside from artists who use Touch Designer, we also built a piece of custom software within Touch to control all of our screens on the stages. And the reasoning for that was that we didn't want to have a sort of obsolete show control kind of software that you see in a lot of concert venues. We also didn't want to can all of our animations and pre-render everything. So we essentially built this software with Elbers from Envoy that a lot of you guys must know, who essentially allowed us to do a bunch of things. So for example, we could live type on the screen. We could, if for this act, for example, Coco Rossi, they didn't have any visuals, so we could put whatever we wanted on their backdrop. We could announce coming acts. We could create generative effects. We could download Instagram imagery from participants who were tagging day for night, Twitter feeds, and so we have a few shots here of the interface that was built. So we had a scheduler in it, and we had sort of a previs and an output, and we sort of controlled all of the interstitial content between acts and also the content of some of the acts using this tool. So it was really great for us, obviously, using Touch, because instead of creating software from scratch, we could use all of the existing Touch sort of hooks and build on top of that, have our own interface. So this is something that was designed so that somebody who has no understanding of Touch could sit behind this computer and you know, run the show. And in the end, Elbers did run most of the show himself, but it was not designed to be. It was designed to be usable by anybody. So it was a really great tool, super solid, and we're going to do it again. We're going to keep improving on this this year. So this was one of the things that we had this really great thing where we would type stuff to people in the audience and say, "You with the blue jacket," and people would sort of like, "Who's talking to me?" And then it created this really nice effect and sort of interaction with the audience. So that's Day for Night. I just wanted to quickly touch on this recent project, Pyre, that was done with AVNC, and a few of the people that are here, Vincent, Colin sitting here, Camille, who's not with us unfortunately, all created content for it. So the idea for this was that this was an LED structure that was designed by AVNC, and sort of plugged into it was a Touch Designer box that was taking a feed from a DJ booth. This was installed at the Lot Radio, which is very close from here. If you guys live in the neighborhood, you've probably seen it. It's like a container that has a live broadcasts on the internet, not 24-hour, but about 12 hours a day. It's DJs from the New York DJ community that come and play. And so we decided to do this event there. So this was completely audio reactive based on modules that were made in Touch specifically for the surface. And the idea was to essentially create a collaborative media surface. So if somebody comes and says, "Hey, I want to do something for Pyre, whenever you show it next, wherever you do it, I have this little module, could you put it on?" And it's really designed to be this sort of evolving collaborative platform. So there's some shots and a little video that kind of shows how it is reacting. So I won't play through the whole thing, but just gives you an idea. So you guys have any questions before I pass the torch to the next person?
Quick question.
Yeah, sure.
How many days do you have for coding? Yeah, that some of those installations look like they take quite a long time.
Typically about a week.
Yeah.
Yeah, depending on not all the artists need that much time, but the ones that have big builds, we bring them a week earlier. Some of them just come 3 days before. So yeah.
How do you guys reach out to the artists, or is there a call, or how do you
It's really been so far just us reaching out. We've actually received a few submissions this year, but they were all past our deadline because we picked people early on. Since it's only our second year, we sort of didn't have the audience really to do this sort of call for proposals, but as the festival evolves, I think it'll become a little bit more like that. Yeah?
What's your take on scaling? Because as a field, sort of kind of seen collaboration between festivals and multimedia art, is that you go there and it's like the stage out there for 2,000 people, and we come from like gallery world or museum world where it's built for like 20, 30 people.
Yeah.
And there's like new central and what happens. Do you have like, or something that focuses so much on this type of activity, do you have a technique for that, or is it for them to find?
No, because I feel like actually when you give artists the opportunity to go big, they take it. You know what I mean? They're excited by it because it's you know, working in a gallery has, for this kind of work, has more constraints than benefits, I think. You know, when you're able to like really let the light bounce, or you know, create these big installations that have the ability for you to walk into them, or you know, and not just walk in by yourself, like have a group of people. You know, the Nonotak installation, which was this giant warehouse with the scaffolding, we had, you know, hundreds of people in it at a time, and it was almost like a communal experience because when the thing reached its crescendo, people would clap and they would scream, and you know, so there was like a really interesting not collaborative, but like audience reaction and group feeling. Okay, well, thank you very much.